Hello and welcome to Cycles of Time, your weekly guide to what's happening on Earth as we make our revolutionary journey around the sun. For time immemorial, our human ancestors have created myths and meanings to help us adapt and thrive as seasons change. Join me each week to explore the intersections of these ancient cycles, from the indigenous medicine wheel to the pagan wheel of the year, the Babylonian and Greek zodiac to the I Ching, the ancient Chinese book of changes. I'm your host, Alison Dale, and this is the Cycles of Time podcast. Hey y'all, welcome to Cycles of Time. This is your weekly forecast for September 30th through October 6th, 2024. How are you all doing out there? I'm having a hard time believing that it's October already. Welcome to October. This in-between eclipse bardo has certainly felt a lot. I don't know about you, but, we're coming up on a solar eclipse in Libra this week, and that is going to wrap up 2 weeks of being kind of in between this eclipse no man's land or purgatory, neutral ground, as they call it in New Orleans, between the two sides of the street. The neutral ground, it's this place where, it doesn't really belong to this or that. And I've definitely been talking to a lot of people out in the world and feeling like, there's a lot of kind of frenetic, electrical kind of energy, and also kind of exhaustion and desire for things to feel clearer. So yeah, for me, I can't tell you how many times I've used the emoji with the kind of spinny spiral eyes in text over the past week. It just has felt like the most appropriate emoji to be using. Just eyes are spinning around. Has your life shifted unexpectedly since the lunar eclipse in Pisces that happened on September 17th? Let me know in the comments if that's something that speaks to you. My life definitely has, unexpectedly. For the past year and a half, the eclipses have been on the Libra-Aries axis, focusing on energetic shifts in our relationships with ourselves versus relationships with others, kind of what's mine versus what's ours or what's yours. It's the me versus we axis of Libra Aries, and that's where those eclipses have been happening. And the lunar eclipse that happened on the 17th of September in Pisces was the first on the Virgo Pisces axis, which will be highlighting over the next year and a half. And so there's a bit of a change up right now, making this eclipse season feel a little extra confusing because we're kind of wrapping up one set of nodes, set of energies that the eclipses are highlighting, and moving towards the next one. And this happens every 18 months. There's kind of this gradient. It doesn't shift immediately from one area to the next. The nodes of the moon, the way the dance of the sun and moon works, allows for a bit of a kind of ebb and flow between the two sets of axes. And so we are, now merging from the kind of me versus we into Virgo Pisces, which is more about kind of how we embody our own sovereignty, Virgo, versus how we are codependent or merged with others in the greater whole, Pisces. And so it's just building on the theme of the me, we, the Libra Aries, and kind of changing it into how we show up in the world, in our sovereign self versus our merged self. So that last eclipse in Pisces a couple weeks ago was like a door opening into the energies of the upcoming several eclipses. And the solar eclipse this week is almost like a door closing on the shifts and realizations that have occurred over the past 18 months. So, we are heading into fall and into a new season. It feels very chilly and cold, and leaves are really in earnest changing where I am right now. And so it feels like, okay, it's new seasons here. And that can bring a certain amount of sadness, a certain amount of just like grief for change. And, having this shift of the opening and closing of doors based on these eclipse axes adds to that a lot. So if you're feeling a lot right now, and possibly a little bit confused about where it's going to land, I'm right there with you. And I know that you're not alone. There's a lot of change in the air right now. The window between 2 or 3 eclipses during any eclipse season is often witnessed as a nebulous and liminal time. So I was really grateful for my conversation last week on the podcast with Rebecca Baker. If you haven't listened to that one, please do. It got a lot of downloads and a lot of listens. So thank you all for being there for that episode. I loved talking to her, and she really shone a positive and welcoming light on the type of dream space that we're experiencing right now, the type of liminality. And despite lots of upheaval in my personal life, and kind of just big changes happening right now, the sun being in gate 46 last week, the gate of determination of the self, really did feel like I felt energy that reoriented me from the shadow of seriousness to the gift of delight, as it was my moon and Mercury gates highlighted last week. And on that Virgo Libra cusp. And I just really loved the conversation that I had about taking a pause to recognize that so much of how we perceive life can be reframed simply by using a different word to gain a different perspective. And this is definitely, I'm making some flashcards right now that have the shadow side and then the gift side on, 2 different sides with 2 different energies, but of the same type of thing. And, my sun gate is confusion and the shadow is confusion. The gift is imagination. And so with all this confusion that I'm kind of familiar with, every time I feel confused, I have started to just kind of flip the script a little bit and say confusion with an arrow pointing like to imagination, because they're the same kind of energy, but one just has a different tone to it. So similarly with seriousness and delight, it's kind of like, okay, taking things, being focused on something, is either looking down focusing or looking up focusing, and they have the same energy of focus, but one is appreciating the possibilities and one is looking at only where you can trim things down. So you can do this for your own sun gate, or if you know your gene keys. I think it's just a cool process to write it down and have that available to say, okay, this is a transitional energy. It doesn't have to be associated with a certain vibe, you know what I mean? So that's been my thing, and thank you for Rebecca for really bringing that into light, seriousness to delight. It's definitely not always easy to embrace the uncertainty that arises during eclipse seasons. So, take Rebecca's invitation from last week and my invitation now to take that sacred pause and breathe deeply and slowly through your nose and sit with the liminality in an embodied way. And just even a few minutes of that every day can help ground this energy that is both all over the place and confusing. So thank you for these reminders. This week, as we conclude the eclipse portal with the second of the 2 eclipses in this season, this new moon solar eclipse in Libra, which is happening on Wednesday, October 2nd, and it's happening in gate 48, which is the gate of depth, and that is known as the well in the I Ching. It is a south node eclipse, so a theme might be something that you have to give up or let go of in order to reach a higher potential. It's kind of like getting out of your own way and releasing something that is no longer aligned with you. The sun and moon will also be conjunct Mercury in Libra during this eclipse, so there might be an intellectual or communication-oriented revelation that could open you up to greater depths of understanding in your world. And then before that, on Monday and Tuesday, the sun is finishing up its transit through gate 18, which is known as the gate of correction. And we started off with that gate last week and on Thursday, but didn't really talk about it on last week's podcast. So I'll jump into that a little bit today to talk about the energies that we're in here if you're listening on Monday or Tuesday. And if you're listening later in the week and want to skip ahead, I'll post in the show notes when we switch over to gate 48. So let's get into the forecast. This week's highlights are the new moon solar eclipse in Libra on Wednesday, October 2nd, the gate of correction in the human design I Ching wheel from last Thursday to this Tuesday, and gate 48, the gate of depth from Wednesday through Sunday. The themes are splenic energies abound, kind of tapping into our spleen as an organ in the body, one of the most primal organs in our body that delivers us a lot of kind of immediate information. So that's key this week. Another theme is judgment when used on a collective scale rather than directed at oneself or another is another term for integrity and can be super powerful. And thirdly, when you're feeling insecure or scared, dipping your cup into the deep well of resources might surprise you what comes up, what's actually down there when you decide to engage with what scares you. So again, eclipses can feel scary. This time of year can feel like, oh God, what is that lurking around the corner that I can't see that is going to pop out at me and just like shake my life up? If that was the case and we had to just be afraid during 2 periods of the year, like, okay, that's fine. Fear is something good to engage with, but it's not like a monster. It's definitely, an invitation to engage with what is hidden. So that is where we are as we enter this spooky season and crisp leaves are crunching below our feet. I went on a hike yesterday and that was what I was feeling under the cottonwoods. It still felt very summery, but there was that crunch of fall that, can add a little bit to the spookiness. So our place in the medicine wheel of the year is west. We are in the direction of water and adulthood. And in the whooshing cycle, we're in the season of metal. The pagan season here is Mabon or Mabon. We just celebrated that with the fall equinox. And so we're in that season now before Samhain or Halloween comes. In the zodiac, we are in the season of Libra. The moon phase is the new moon, and it's a solar eclipse in Libra. And then human design and I Ching gene keys were in gate 18 and gate 48, the gate of correction and the gate of depth. So before we dive in, I wanted to let you know that I made my 6 Gates of Libra season post on Instagram. So if you follow me at Cycles of Time Podcast or astro.somatics, that's where you can find those. I've made one for every season since Aries now, and it's just been a really fun way to get an overview of what energies we're working with in these micro seasons of the zodiac season. And after I posted it, I saw another post by Karen Scholle of Human Design Sphinx, and it really struck me because I had already been on this type of thinking about Libra season gates. But she says the sun moves through gate 46, the love of the body, at the September equinox, and that was what we talked about last week, the determination of the self. And then it goes through all 7 gates of the spleen. And that was an Instagram post that I found that just kind of hit me like, oh, wow. For those of you unfamiliar with human design, each of the 64 I Ching inspired gates of the Fuxi cycle wheel are also correlated with one of the body's energy centers. So like the chakras in our bodies. And all of the gates of Libra season and most of Scorpio season are located in the spleen. And so the spleen is a fist-sized organ, which is in the upper left side of your abdomen, and it represents body consciousness and the ability to kind of instinctively tune in to what's good for us and what's not good for us. It's the oldest evolutionary awareness center and representing our primal instincts and our intuitions and our fears. And so I was like, the way that this person for Human Design Sphinx, Karen Schola, put this was that, what did she write? She said, I had this thought a few weeks ago, and it's been rattling around in my head ever since. Spooky season and cuffing season are also spleen season. It kind of works, yeah. Spooky because fear, duh. Cuffing season, as in let me find someone to stay cozy with all winter, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. And both make sense when we look at it through the lens of the sequence of the wheel and the quarters of the year. We're in the quarter of duality, which is all about purpose fulfilled through bonding. And that makes me think about everything I've learned about myself in relationships over the last few years. And there are some pretty clear themes. She says, relationships can bring up a lot of fears for me. I've been afraid that if I showed up all of myself, I would be rejected. I've been afraid of being too cold, too harsh, too analytical. I've been afraid of being too sensitive and emotionally volatile, too opinionated, not nice enough, too much of this, not enough of that. All of those fears created beliefs. If I downplay my bitchiness, maybe they'll stay. If I morph into the version of cool girl they seem to like, maybe they'll stay. Maybe if I have no needs, they'll stay. Maybe I won't be abandoned. But the abandonment I should have been paying attention to is me abandoning myself. I've ignored that splenic hit more times than I can count, and that compromised my relationship with myself. That's why I couldn't trust myself, and that not trusting myself bled out into every relationship in my life. I got confused. I thought other people were untrustworthy, and I wanted to focus on that part. But that was also about me. Deconditioning my spleen has largely come down to two things: learning how to listen and to heed that voice, and also apologizing to her, apologizing to all of the parts of myself that I've ignored and abandoned, and forgiving us all for doing the best we could with the information and skills we had at the time. So I guess the headline is this: purpose fulfilled through bonding is about our relationships, and I think the most important relationship any of us will ever have is the relationship to self. And we heal that through love, through heart-centeredness. So that was a caption for this splenic post, and it got me because I was like, oh man, the spleen. I just started taking a evolutionary herbalism course that I'm really excited about, and it focuses on the organs of the body. And I also have been watching a lot about kind of the Chinese medicine energetics of the organ system. So I've been really interested in organs, and it's fascinating how these gates are applied to our kind of organ system / chakra energy centers in the human design system as well. And I had kind of held that at arm's length for a while, that study, but I'm just, as we go inward into the darker seasons, and I'm taking more, herbal remedies and things for imbalances in my system, just feeling like that. I'm wanting to do that, right, in Virgo season. But it's starting to make me really pay attention to the way all of these energies do relate to the body. And so, yeah, the spleen's connection with these spooky fall months. And also, Libra being the sign of relationship and inner balance, and then Scorpio being associated with depth and intimacy. So this darkening of the year is encouraging us to deepen our relationships and intimacy with ourselves as well as others and with the collective. And, just what I mentioned about the eclipse axis and kind of where we are in that, there's such an emphasis on, figuring out me versus we. But I loved what she said about this relationship with self being a non-self-abandonment, being the most important thing, and to listen to your splenic intuition on when that's happening, because it's one of the hardest things to do. So yeah, give yourself grace, but listen to yourself in the depths of your gut. and in your organs. So as we travel through the next several weeks and the next 7 gates, starting this week, starting last Thursday, all of these next 7 gates, all the next episodes are going to be about splenic gates. So you can kind of listen to these episodes aware that the energies are splenic energies and focused on embodiment, body wisdom, intuition, and instinct. So that is the season that we're in here. So as we start this week, we are starting the week with an eye for correction with gate 18. And in human design, gate 18 is known as the gate of correction. In the I Ching, it's symbolized mountain over wind, which is known as corruption or decay. And in the gene keys, the path is from judgment to perfection through the gift of integrity. In the traditional I Ching, 18 is a bit of a foreboding hexagram, if I'm going to be honest. So again, if you felt kind of intense stuff coming up over the weekend or wanting to just fix things all around, that is the natural energy. And I'm sorry I didn't have a forecast about this, but sometimes, again, hindsight can be 20/20. Has been for me as I research this and get into it. But yeah, so 18 in the I Ching is represented by kind of cold winds descending from the top of a mountain with the possibility of maybe destroying the crops below during this season of weather changes. And just wanted to give my heart extension and love to the Eastern Seaboard and Florida and Asheville and, the Carolinas and Tennessee and all of the places that have been experiencing massive climate change events and flooding. And I, again, experienced Hurricane Katrina back in the day in New Orleans and know what it's like to lose things to a flood and to have that type of deep insecurity. So big heart going out to that whole region of the world, as well as all of the regions that are experiencing this climate crisis in these powerful ways. But yeah, I see this image, mountain over wind, kind of, coming in, and there's a big change coming. And so with that, scrutiny and judgment is necessary to avoid a larger crisis, and looking for issues and making corrections is required for survival and success. So the energy we've been in over the weekend and that we're currently in is about being a critic and that can, be for good or for bad, right? But sometimes it's absolutely necessary to have scrutiny and judgment. People with gate 18 active typically have keen perception for what needs to be improved and what could be better. And in the shadow frequency of this energy, this type of constant judgment is often turned on other people directly, our closest relationships, or on ourselves, which can be detrimental to our self-esteem and to getting anything accomplished. It can be a bit of kind of a navel-gazy and victimized energy of always judging and critiquing your own self. And dang, I will tell you, I have been going through that over the past week, just put it back on me, and so that doesn't go nowhere. In the higher frequency, though, when someone with this gate looks at the bigger picture, or when this gate is active in the transit, if we look at the bigger picture, the judgment can turn into the propensity to act with integrity, and we can be very gifted and valuable to creating solutions to larger scale issues. So it's not just about criticizing and correcting, but it's about guiding others toward a higher standard of excellence and guiding ourselves towards a higher standard of excellence. And when you think of the word integrity, which is the gift level of this in the gene keys, integrity is used in architecture and in engineering and in data and computer programming, and that all integrity indicates something that has a strong foundation based on keen perception and good judgment from the initial stages of building. So from the very beginning, that is what people with gate 18 can bring to the table. And it's a splenic embodied gate, so this judgment and integrity isn't mental, but it's rather instinctual. I'd say high standards is a key phrase for this gate. And the energy can come off as highly critical if the opinion, the judgment is not invited. So it's a good idea over today and tomorrow to notice your tone and your timing in communication when offering your input. And when we present corrections as opportunities for growth and improvement, rather than as criticisms of past mistakes, those of us with Gate 18 can foster a more receptive and collaborative atmosphere. When I was listening to the Gene Keys audio chapter about Gate 18, I was struck by the emphasis on parenting and childhood development. Both Gate 18 and Gate 48 this week, the two gates of this week, are focused on parenting in a big way in stages of our childhood. In the traditional I Ching, Gate 18 is the gateway of corruption and decay, and it's also sometimes called work on what has been spoiled by the parents. We're all doing that a little bit, right? It's kind of unavoidable. That's what life is about, is improving on the last generation, perhaps. But it's kind of about the judgment of the conditioning we've been receiving from our parents and our teachers and our priests and our social groups and our ancestors in general. So we have to, as children and as, humans, we have to judge what has come before us in order to progress, in order to move forward. Ra-Uru-Hu says of Gate 18, each generation, naturally and genetically, is empowered to challenge the next. It is simply there. The 18th gate is about challenging that authority, challenging the authority of the mother and the father. However, that challenge is also rooted in a fear of that authority. That authority can be unreasonable, and by being unreasonable, that authority can be dangerous. From the moment we come into the world, we carry with us a fear that those are there to care for us may not, in fact, do a good job. Just about everybody who goes through being a teenager laments their fate and their parents. It's built into us. It's built into us to challenge those patterns, not necessarily to bring them down, and not necessarily to find that there is something the matter with them. Many times, it's about reassuring ourselves that the pattern is worthy and is correct, but the challenge must always be there. So my eclipse surprises and upheavals over the past couple weeks have had a lot to do with being a parent and choices that I have to make as a parent, with schooling and with discipline and with all of the different things. Parenting is hard, y'all. It's really hard. And co-parenting dynamics. I have a wonderful partner, stepfather to my daughter, and also my ex-husband, and who's very involved in my daughter's life, and, grandparents and just other people around. So learning how to both be the best parent you can be and then also navigate co-parenting dynamics for the best of the child is really alive right now. And so all of this Gate 18 business about challenging authority, I live in the same hometown as I grew up in. And so when I moved back here after living independent and in big cities and free for 18 years, when I moved back, it's like you always go home and you kind of revert to certain dynamics in your family unit. I think that's very natural, but being able to look at that at the same time as raising the next generation brings up a lot of this, kind of like, what is it that I'm challenging? What new things am I bringing to the table? What is my daughter already challenging of me and my style of parenting and doing things? And it's a lot to process sometimes. So, the insights and contemplations around Gate 18 really have helped me a lot this week as I think about parenting. And I listened to it at the end of last week as the sun began to transit through 18. And it was the perfect time to have this information delivered, to really just think about the bigger picture and have judgments on that rather than directing them towards my dad or towards my daughter or toward, like somebody else or back to myself. So part of this process is about confronting our own parental conditioning and learning to parent and hold our own inner child without reacting to judgments or self-judgments. So as we have a couple more days in this gate, some questions you can ask yourself in the beginning of this week are, where in my life do I feel a strong urge to correct or improve something? How can I communicate my desire for improvement in a way that is supportive and constructive? And what practices can I adopt to balance my corrective instincts with appreciation for what is already good? So I'll post those in the show notes as well. I think they're good questions to ask with this kind of foreboding energy of change. So concluding that and moving on to Wednesday, October 2nd at 2:49 p.m. Eastern Time. That'll be 12:49 my time, Mountain Standard Time. Soon after the sun transits into gate 48, which is known as the gate of depth in human design. So themes of this gate, and therefore of this eclipse, are wisdom, femininity, adaptability, and resourcefulness. Solar eclipses happen when the moon is on the same plane in the same part of the ecliptic as the sun. So the moon blocks the sun's rays from our point of view here on Earth. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Symbolically, the moon represents our subconscious, our emotions, and our embodied wisdom, which in an eclipse is blocking out the rays of the sun, which represent consciousness, willpower, and the mind. So in solar eclipses, even more than other new moons, the body is keeping the score, and the ground is fertile for new beginnings. As with all eclipses, I don't recommend willfully planting seeds in this fertile soil. Where some new moons, that is the thing to do, is to notice that the soil is fertile and to plant some stuff into it. This time it's maybe taking the time to notice what the seeds that the wind has already blown in, and without planting them consciously, kind of watch what is already there grow along with kind of the path of your destiny. As far as the micro-season specific energy for this eclipse, I'd say it feels pretty supportive. In Libra, new beginnings and new growth might be emphasized in the realm of relationships. And so in the I Ching and human design gates as well, with this eclipse, gate 48 is represented by water over wind, which is known as the well in the I Ching, and it represents nourishment and resources from the surrounding environment and from unexpected people. So after we have the mountain over wind with the cold winds blowing in from the mountain down below, we now have water over wind, which is it's a nourishing hexagram. It says an inexhaustible supply of water and sustenance are referenced by hexagram 48. This is a time to make good use of all your resources. But if the well seems to have run dry or the supply cannot be accessed, the solution lies in banding together with others for the good of all. This is a time to group together despite differences. It's time to draw from the well of knowledge. Let life itself sustain you. The wise person knows that despite superficial differences, we are all the same on the inside. Draw your sustenance from the entire kingdom. Good can come from anywhere and everywhere. And that is from iFate's description of that hexagram. In the gene keys, the energetic path of gate 48 goes from inadequacy to wisdom through the gift of resourcefulness. And so during this eclipse, inadequacy and insecurity may show their faces, revealing places in our life where we don't feel good enough. It could feel like staring down into a dark well and having trouble knowing how deep the darkness goes. Whatever is revealed on this lunation surrounding feelings of inadequacy encourages us to seek our resources in the moment, like a light at the bottom of the well. So it's like when we face our fears enough to drop a bucket down into the well, down into our fears, and engage with the unknown, we're likely to cause a ripple that catches the light, and more likely than not able to pull a bucket of water up from the depths as well. So yeah, the well, I think of I think of one of those kind of like wishing wells, or just old fashioned, stone wells with a bucket that you can just lower down, and maybe a creepy old one, or just, the feeling of looking down into the darkness and saying like, I don't want to even engage with that. I don't have the skills to engage with that. I'm too afraid. I don't want to look at the darkness. I don't want to look into the shadows, because who knows how deep it could go, right? And then the light at the bottom of the well is like, wait, there might be something down there. And you kind of have to start to engage with it first in order to see that it doesn't go on forever, and that actually what's down there might be very able to resource us. And then wisdom, the city level of this, gate 48, comes from acknowledging that both the dark and the light have their place. And so instead of avoiding the fear of darkness by hiding our heads in the sand, turning away, or reacting to it with anger or blame, wisdom means knowing that darkness and confusion and the void is required to understand what lightness and clarity want to emerge, and that there's a right time for that emergence. The 48th gate has similarities with the serenity prayer, which is accepting what we can't change, having the courage to change what we can, and drawing from the wisdom to know the difference. So, yeah, we can't get rid of the darkness of the well. You can't suddenly be like, oh, I'm just going to light it up all the time. The well is a dark place. Where our resources come from is a place that has kind of an infinite depth to it. But having that courage to lower the bucket down and ripple the water and pull something up from that place of what we fear is really what this week is all about. I feel like, as humans, we rarely know our own true capabilities, and it's really a lot more common to fear our inadequacies and get lost in this, again, navel-gazing kind of cycle of just like, I'm just going to turn my head from it, and then it gets worse, and then you turn even further, and then it gets worse, and before you know it, you've created a pattern that is sometimes very obvious to people around you, like, oh wow, you've been, slouching over your desk for your entire life and not walking and not stretching your spine, and then suddenly you have like kind of a bent spine, and it's like, where did this come from? Why am I having back pain? But it's it's repetitive, and it oftentimes requires just facing your fear. It's like, oh man, I'm feeling like I really want to get more fit, but it's too, if you're like, it's too late for me now, and I'm never going to be able to do it, and you don't start with one foot in front of the other, then it just will keep getting darker and deeper seeming. So this energy, this eclipse and this week is just turning a little bit towards it, and doesn't mean jumping down into the well, but it's just lowering that one bucket and seeing what comes up. And a lot of times wisdom comes with that, because it's recognizing that they come together. Like gate 18, gate 48 is also about childhood and parenting and how we were parented, like I said. So personally, as I move through a fairly difficult week of parenting choices, I am deeply appreciating insights from these two splenate gates and paying attention to my spleen. The gene key states, for all its darkness and fear, the 48th gene key holds great hope for humanity, and this hope mostly lands in the hands of parents and caregivers, I'll add. Gate 48 reflects on the ages between 7 and 14 in the life cycle, which is a stage of emotional development where children very much need a stable emotional environment and positive role modeling on the emotional level. Many insecurities and feelings of inadequacy are formed in the human psyche during this highly sponge-like time of life, when the same feelings of insecurity or doubt are modeled to kids by the adults around them. So 7 to 14 is a time of life when children are highly attuned to the emotions of their parents. And of course they are before that as well, but they're, I think, littler ones. The first 7 years are more focused on kind of just figuring the world out and their own survival. And then, between 7 and 14, they're so sponge-like and so attuned and so smart and hearing everything, not only the words that we speak, but the feelings, the underlying emotions that we have. And it's, I think, more that than the words. It's more this kind of somatic experience of being attuned to what the emotional environment you're around is feeling like. So it's subtle. And how we arrive at our independent teenage years in an embodied and felt sense will affect the rest of our lives in a big way. So Richard Rudd of the Gene Keys notes how important it is to look for hidden resources during this time of parenting a child, and for parents to work on healing their own emotional turmoil and raise their frequencies so that they can break a cycle of passing them down through their children and ancestors beyond children and the children's children. So cycle breakers, I've seen a lot of that phrase in the past several years of just saying, no, the buck stops here. It stops with me. I don't need to continue to let my inner turmoil and mostly fear of inadequacy, of not being good enough, but then hiding that, letting that show up and dictate the way that we're approaching life and parenting, and engaging with others in relationship. It's like this gate of the well is like this very beautiful, watery, kind of feminine, all-encompassing gate that can handle all emotions and know that emotions are here for a reason. Emotions are tools. Emotions are not definitions of who we are, and really being able to be vulnerable with them and know that all feelings are welcome as we start to approach the well, right? Trusting the shadow frequency itself. So trusting that fear is also okay and not being defensive about it, but entering into our own fears is kind of the only way to heal our own anxieties. I believe this, and we have to stop being afraid of fear itself and just lower that bucket down the well to see what it will bring back up. So as we lean more into trusting life and trusting that life has ebbs and flows, we stop fearing fear as much. And this definitely doesn't happen overnight, but it has a noticeable power. And once you start knowing that you can dip the bucket into the well, I'm just going to keep saying it, and that in and itself is not as scary as we might think, and kind of break that seal, then we might start seeing that ripple of light in more situations instead of seeing the cloudy shadows. And yeah, just tapping into that resource that is within us, that is within our fear, is really a huge lesson of this eclipse and this ending of this week as the sun transits through 48. So really powerful, really powerful stuff that is seeming so on the nose for me. It's so real right now. How am I afraid? How am I hiding from my fear and pretending that I'm not afraid of certain things? When I turn towards that fear and name it and say, hey, okay, that's actually not so bad, and it makes me feel more empowered to do something about it. And then, for yourself, I don't know if you're feeling this, but just know that if you are, again, this is really where the energies are at right now. And for a little bit more nuanced information on how this eclipse might show up for you, you can look astrologically to the house in your chart where Libra falls to see what elements of your life might be undergoing these revelations, and where you might want to lower that bucket down, just to see what might come up. So for me, eclipses often feel like kind of hindsight is 2020, where when I look ahead to, if I look at the house in my chart, of where the eclipse is going to fall, and I'm like, the house of communications, or the house of, intimacy, or other people's money, or whatever. And I'm like, oh yeah, that something's big's gonna happen there. It's really hard to predict changes that might come from an eclipse. But so oftentimes when I look back a week later after the eclipse has happened, I'm just like, whoa, aha, that that makes so much sense that that's what's unveiled. But it's kind of like a time of not trying to predict and spending time in that control effort, but really just, like letting the universe show you something. Shine the flashlight, darken the room completely, and then brightly shine the light on something that might have been a blind spot. So I oftentimes, after an eclipse happens, I reflect back on what came up for me, because it really always does. And now, especially since I pay attention to it in this framework, but I just say, oh yeah, that was definitely an area of my life where I had a lot of blind spots. There wasn't even considering taking a look under the rock. It was just so blind to me. And I think those are the areas on this cyclic frequency of eclipses. Every 9 years we experience the same axis. And so that area of life might need a bit of a shakeup if it's just been sitting stagnant for a while. So this eclipse for me is falling in my third house of communication, siblings and old friends, neighbors, early education, gossip, immediate surroundings, and local community. It's a Gemini ruled house where it's kind of all about like what's immediately surrounding you and what are people talking about in the immediate surroundings. And I definitely feel energies pointing to changes and kind of some upheaval and some discomfort in this area of life right now. But I'm not quite sure exactly what is hidden from view. So it's feeling soupy and frustratingly confusing. And I'm sure by the end of this week, some clarity will emerge, and with that, some kind of actionable insights, because it always seems to do that after the eclipse. But leading up to an eclipse in these first few days of the week, it doesn't really help to try to predict or avoid or hide away from. It's times of just seeing something that might not have been seen before. Eclipses are cobweb cleaners, they're flashlights into the darkness, and they're removers of blind spots. So as we reach this final eclipses on the Libra Aries axis before we move into Virgo and Pisces energy for the next 18 months, there might be a bit of conclusiveness to the parts of life that have been shaken up by the universe in order to reveal what had been hidden from your consciousness. So let me know in the comments what house Libra is in your chart, or where Libra is, and I'll let you know how this eclipse might reveal some hidden beauty in your life, or just some things that are going to rise to the surface perhaps. Take care this week, and remember to stretch your body. We are in this 7-week stretch of really splenic embodied gates, so trust your intuition, but let your body move to be able to feel the juices from that, and drink lots of water. The emotions that come up as the seasons change from summer to fall can feel heavy, and not to mention what it feels like to shine a light on a dark place after ignoring that place for a while, for it being hidden. So take it easy on yourself this week, and don't try to effort too much or make big decisions until the eclipse portal closes, if you can help it. We can't always help making decisions, and that's okay. But if you can, and you can just give it a few more days to really receive and absorb what your body is telling you, and what the cosmos is telling you, just be with that. Give it some space and some quietude. For myself, nature. This is all about nature and our relationship with our environment, and just going out into the cottonwoods, the river yesterday, and walking around, being with the pace of nature was like, this is what is wanted right now. So I'm going to force myself to do more of that. And I'm going to try to wake up every day this week and think about what I'm grateful for amidst the turbulence, and lead with that. Lead with my heart. Because that's the only thing that I can do. So best wishes to you all for this new moon eclipse, and for getting through the eclipse portal. Onward we go. And thanks as always for subscribing and sharing and commenting if you found value in this. You can follow me on Instagram. I always forget to mention this, but I'm on there. So follow me on Instagram at Cycles of Time Podcast or at Astrosomatics. And I will see you next week. Have a beautiful, beautiful day. Bye.